Welcome back. I am Kevin Hogan. This is Inertia Satori. This is our second video. We're going to try something a little different. We're going to dig into Elizabeth Bishop's One Art, one of my favorite poems. It was written in 1976. It is a villanelle, which is an Italian form. You can look it up, figure it out. You ought to try to write one, write two, write three. It will help you understand language better and create better lines, so you create better poems. Um, it is a poem that chronicles the poet's attempt to master the emotional toll of loss, spanning from trivial items to the profound, the tragic loss of her partner, a woman named Alice Meththesel. So it was published originally in the New Yorker, and then it was in her book Geography 3, and it serves as a powerful, structured meditation on trauma. It's often read as a modern Ars Poetica, a poem about the making of poetry itself. And in that sense, it is not only about loss, but about how experience is shaped into language, controlled language, and how that control begins to fail under pressure. Um, this framework is going to be useful for us. I feel like it's the only framework we need to work with, because on this channel we look at poetry for what it is, the words on the page, not any lens that anybody brings to it. I really hope that when we're reading this and going through this, you are just looking at it on the surface of the language of what it is, and then finding the meaning from there, not as some preconceived notion of where this may fall. So this is built like an almost controlled demonstration, and you can see it spiral into something really personal, which it doesn't start out with. It's casual in the beginning. The art of losing isn't hard to master, and the early examples in it are trivial at best: lost keys, wasted times, low stakes stuff, universal stuff. Everyone's lost keys, everyone's wasted time. And this creates a sense of confidence, as if loss can be trivialized, systematized, even. And then the poem expands outward. The losses become larger, more abstract. There's places, names, cities, two rivers, a continent. And this escalation gives the illusion of mastery. The speaker seems to be proving her thesis by surviving increasingly difficult losses. A continent, come on. Structurally, the villanelle form reinforces this. It keeps repeating lines, sounding almost like a mantra, or self-conditioning, or trying to convince yourself, because the expansion is a setup. The final stanza, boom, everything collapses inward, and the loss becomes singular, intimate, you. Suddenly, this generalized, lofty idea, philosophy of loss is not an abstract thing, and it isn't manageable, because at that point, the art of losing fractures. She has to say, write it. The parenthetical write it is the crucial point in the poem. It exposes the strain of having to perform, of having to have a philosophy, of having to demonstrate a principle publicly, and she can no longer do it. She forces herself to say something that maybe she doesn't truly believe. So the poem expands in scope to build authority, distance, and then snaps back to the personal. So what I want to try to do here is we're going to try to look at the poem itself. I'm going to pull it up here from the Poetry Foundation website, and we're going to read through it a little bit. It's just me, so I'm going to have to be jumping back and forth a little bit. Hold on. Sorry about that. The cat is trying to get into a bag of trash there. So let's start. One art, Elizabeth Bishop. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Now, the opening line turns loss into a skill, the art of losing. Loss is no longer an event that happens, but something that can be mastered. The phrase filled with intent to be lost assigns agency to the objects themselves, as if the disappearing is something that is inherent or embedded in everything. And the claim no disaster appears immediately as a conclusion, but one that hasn't been tested yet. She's saying it, but it functions more like a rule or a law that she's laying down than a truth that is demonstrated. All right, and then we move on to the second stanza. And here we lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The poem shifts into instruction. It's telling us lose something every day. This is where the poetry is. It normalizes this disappearance, and it takes something philosophical in the first stanza, and it becomes routine practice. It grounds it in the mundane, so to speak, and the suggested structures. The structure suggests training, repetition. You know, is used here to convert instability into habit. As the list expands, keys, hours, names, places, it's all loss. It doesn't matter what you're losing, you're just losing. Then we go and then practice losing further, losing faster. Places and names and where it was meant to travel. None of these things will bring disaster. At this point, the structure begins to strain a little bit. And we go on to the next verse. Why don't we just read the next verse? Because I feel like they're together. I lost my mother's watch. And look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. At this point, the structure, there's a strain. The mother's watch changes the nature of the list of things. It becomes this extremely a piece of memory almost, as opposed to keys, which you were probably given when you bought a house. It's no longer a neutral object. It's inheritance. It is your past. It is the mythology of the family. Uh, and then we get into I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vast are some realms I owned. 2 rivers, a continent. I missed them, but it wasn't a disaster. The exclamation and look breaks the controlled tone, as if attention must be actively directed back to the system the poem is building. And then we hit the last verse. Even you, the joking voice, a gesture I love. I shouldn't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like write it like disaster. This is brilliant. This is why this is one of my favorite things. The parentheses are so significant and create, you know, uh, as a function of the structure of the poem. They contain an interruption, the joking voice, a gesture I love. It's no longer abstract loss. It isn't things from the past. It isn't the mother's watch anymore. It isn't continents. It isn't realms. It's very specific. The claim of mastery, I shan't have lied. She's putting this pressure on the intimacy of what is being described. And at this point, the Ars Poetica reading becomes visible in practice. The poem is actively demonstrating how language attempts to control emotional experience, how we try to synthesize words and things that are unspeakable into something that can be shared, that can express, like I said, something that's unexplainable. It's what poetry is. It's showing someone a glimpse of something that they know is true. And the final fracture is write it. The imperative shifts inward. The speaker instructs herself, tells herself, do this, believe it. Like disaster. That final hesitation is so critical. The poem doesn't sustain its earlier claim. The repetition of disaster returns, but now it's delayed, it's questioned, it's modified, it's unstable. And what began as a law, a rule, a instruction ends as a tentative, compromised assertion. This poem is about the transformation of experience into controlled form. However, what the poem ultimately reveals is not mastery, but the pressure that accumulates when control is applied. The meaning is not delivered as a statement, it's produced through the strain of the language. If you like this, think about liking, subscribing, leave a comment below. We'll be doing this. We're going to get into some theory. We're going to get into some poems. We're going to get into some of my raving about poetry in the world today and where the state is, the state of our culture, how to get people back into poetry and why poetry is out there and exists. You just have to look for it. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Kevin Hogan, Inertia Satori. Remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long.